Welcome to our first presentation this semester, Putting the Fun in Functional, Meet the OT students. We're really excited to be here with you all, and like Jeanette just mentioned, to be the second group of occupational therapy master students from the USC CHANS partnership with the USC Emeriti Center. So before we get into the agenda for today, we just want to emphasize that the purpose of these presentations in this partnership is to share information related to health and wellness that will hopefully be useful for your everyday lives, as well as establish a sense of community and create a safe space. So in doing so, we really want this to be a dialogue. We encourage and value your participation. So you can use the raise hand function if you want to get our attention and speak up, or you can put questions in the chat as we go. And Rachel and Catherine, who will introduce themselves soon, will be monitoring the chat for us today. So moving into the agenda, what we have planned for today is to share a bit about ourselves, our profession, and how it relates to healthy aging, our experiences as students during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as a faculty's experience, and also to get to know you a little bit and hear your experience with the transition to virtual platforms. We'll then provide information about our upcoming presentations and one-on-one consultations, and conclude with the opportunity to ask us any questions you may have. So without further ado, our fieldwork educator, Dr. Hall, will kick off our introductions.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So hi, I'm Dr. Ashley Hall. I'm an associate professor of clinical occupational therapy here at the USC CHAN Division of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy. I'm also the coordinator of our primary care residency and services within our CHAN Division. As Elizabeth just mentioned, I'm also their fieldwork educator. So I was really pleased to have partnered with the Emeriti Center starting last summer with our fieldwork students. So some of you are familiar faces. It's great to see you again. And to those of you who I haven't met before, very nice to meet you. My hometown is Torrance, California, so I'm a local. My clinical area of expertise is in primary care, geriatrics, chronic conditions, and wellness. I became an OT in 2011, so I've been practicing for almost 10 years now. And some of my favorite occupations are gardening, walking, and sewing. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Elizabeth. Or sorry, Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Capolino. I am originally from the Santa Ynez Valley, but I spent a lot of my childhood in the Palos Verdes, South Bay area as well. I went to USC for my undergraduate degree. I graduated in 2016. I majored in human biology with an emphasis in human performance. And I also double minored in psychology and sports media studies. I got into OT because I really wanted to work with people. I got my first kind of glimpse of what OT was when I volunteered with Pediatric Therapy Network. And I just really appreciated their emphasis on working within somebody's daily tasks, making things fun and engaging, but also very effective for each person. So from there, I knew that I really wanted to work in healthcare, promoting positive lifestyles with people. And I just really like how comprehensive and client-centered OT is, and the ability to really look at a person from all aspects to promote their best life. Some of my favorite occupations include cooking and also eating, and really anything outdoors. So hiking, skiing, running, whatever gets me kind of out in the sunshine. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Alyssa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel. I was actually born in Korea, but I moved to Fresno, California when I was about 10. But I've been living in LA for about 5 years now. I also went to USC for my undergraduate, and I majored in psychology and minored in dynamics of early childhood. I wanted to be an OT mainly because of my passion to help others. And similar to Alyssa, I found that OTs have a unique way of helping people through supporting their engagement in what is very meaningful and important to them. So I realized that that's what I want to do, and that's why I'm here today. Some of my favorite occupations are swimming and traveling, and also making videos of my trips. And then with that, I'll pass it over to Catherine.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine, and I grew up in Temple City, which is in the San Gabriel Valley. I actually studied at UCLA, the rival school, and I majored in psychology and disability studies. I got into OT because at UCLA, I worked at a clinic for children transitioning from foster care into adoption. And I saw how the OT used really creative ways to teach coping strategies for children going through very difficult situations. So I wanted to do the same as well. My hobbies include painting, organizing and decorating spaces, and I also really like to play the ukulele. So now I will hand it back to Elizabeth, who will be introducing herself.
Hello again, I'm Elizabeth. I was born and raised in Los Angeles and attended USC for undergrad, currently for my master's, and will be starting my Doctor of Occupational Therapy degree at USC in the fall. So I'm really excited about and honored to eventually be a triple Trojan. My favorite activities are playing and watching sports. So I've been doing a lot of trail running, golf, tennis during this time. And of course, in the fall, cheering on the USC football team on Saturdays. And I chose occupational therapy because I'm similar to everyone else. I've always wanted to help people. And I learned I could uniquely do this through OT by looking at the individual holistically, learning a person's narrative, and using meaningful activity to help them reach their goals and lead a fulfilling life. So now that you've heard a bit about us, we want to take a quick poll to get the temperature of the room and see how everyone today is feeling in general. So like I mentioned at the beginning, we want to build a sense of community with you all. And part of what that entails on our end is valuing your health and well-being. So hopefully the poll should pop up in a second. So I'll give you a moment to answer on a scale of 1 to 5. How are you feeling today in general? And which color describes how you're generally feeling today. So we'll leave about a minute or two to answer that. And also feel free to write any comments in the chat. All right, this is moving fast. About 70% have voted, so we'll go into it in a bit. All right, let's do about 20 more seconds and then we'll talk about it. Okay, any last takers? I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, can everyone see the results of the poll?
No.
No? Let's
No.
see.
There
Okay.
it is.
Now you can? Okay,
Yes.
great. All right, so the majority of people put 4, I'm feeling good, have some 5s, a couple 2s and 3s. So I was wondering, does one person who put down a 4 or 5 want to share why they're feeling really good today?
This is Dr. Corner, and I put down number 4, I feel good, because I feel good almost every day. And I don't feel fantastic because I'm feeling some tension in my shoulders. Other than that, I'm great.
All right, well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm glad that you feel good every day. And, we'll have a stretch break in a moment, and hopefully that'll help loosen up the tension that you're feeling in your shoulders. Thank you again for sharing.
I'd like to add that I got my second vaccine today, so I'm real happy about that. So I've crossed that bridge, which is seen on my background, which is the LA River, which is where I live close to. So it's been a good experience, even though we're in the pandemic. You find ways to do positive things, and I'm pleased to be here listening to you today. Thank you.
Great, congratulations. That's really awesome to hear. And thank you again for being with us. Okay. See, oh, sorry, did someone else want to share?
Oh, I'm happy to volunteer. I'm one of the people who feels really good today. I just showed my rebuilt knee to my surgeon this morning and got high marks for how well it has healed. I've been able to see it on the x-ray. And the sun came up bright this morning and shone into our bedroom to greet us before 7 o'clock. So it was a lovely start to the day.
That is super great news. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We'll always like to hear good news these days. And I see that Judith Walter has her hand raised if she wants to speak up.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to intervene because this is a horrible day for me to be doing this because I woke up with a neck ache this morning and it's been around most of the day. And usually I'm in much better spirits than I am today. Actually, I'm in good spirits, it's just I'm in pain. So I just wanted to, I think it's wonderful. I just moved into a new house. It's beautiful. I have a really nice life and other than the COVID, we're doing really well. And so I just wanted to interject that because I wanted to answer the question truthfully, but I didn't want to be a Debbie Downer either.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we really appreciate you answering truthfully and despite the pain being here, but it's also amazing that, even if you're not feeling your best today, you still see that there's other positives in your life and things to be grateful for. So moving on, does one person want to share what color they're feeling today? There's a resounding gold as the answer.
I didn't answer.
I think Calvin has his hand raised if you'd like to share. Oh, Calvin, you're muted.
Sorry.
Sure.
As a kid, we're asked to pick a color, and I picked yellow. And then being an SC person, gold certainly fits in there. So that's been my favorite color all my life. And being Chinese, I guess I am yellow. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I chose cardinal because it was closest to red, since today is Heart Association Day, right? And then you're supposed to wear red. So I've got red in my sweater, and so that's why I chose cardinal as the closest to red.
Awesome. That's good to know. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much all for sharing. We really like hearing that. And we're so excited to get to know you all even more throughout these group presentations. So now Catherine is going to give us a brief overview of occupational therapy.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for sharing again. We love hearing from you and all of the, different feedback that you have and just how you are doing today. Many of you already know what OT is and you probably heard about it before, but for those of you who don't, I'm just going to give a little brief overview. So the term occupation in OT is describing any meaningful activity that you need to do, want to do, or are expected to do. So this can range from activities we do in our everyday life, such as eating, bathing, or getting dressed, or it could be activities we do for fun, such as reading or painting. So OTs help people across the entire lifespan live their life to the fullest. And now I'm going to pass it on to Rachel, who will provide an overview of how OT relates to healthy aging.
So with our population rapidly aging, there has been an increasing need for occupational therapists to promote healthy aging and work with aging adults and their families or caregivers to improve their well-being and quality of life in older age. And so occupational therapists achieve this by helping older adults navigate sometimes difficult life transitions such as retirement or acquiring a disability. We also help them maintain or form new meaningful roles and occupations, safely participate in daily activities at home or in the community, and lastly, manage personal health and wellness. So with a focus on wellness and healthy lifestyle, we hope to bring in occupational therapists' unique value in promoting healthy aging during our time here at the Emeritus Center. So our roles include introducing wellness strategies and helping our clients build healthy habits into their routines. So for example, we recommend to our clients to take breaks frequently, about every 20 to 30 minutes when they're sitting down for a long time for work or for any other reasons. Because taking a break to move and loosen our body helps us to not only feel refreshed and more alert, but also it prevents pain and injuries. So since we've been sitting in our seats for about 15 to 20 minutes now, I think this is a good stopping point for us. So let's stop with the presentation for a minute. And we're gonna take a short stretch break together. So I'll be sitting down, but then if you want to do these stretches while standing up, feel free to. I also want to mention that if you're experiencing pain while you're doing this, please be careful and you can stop if you need to. Okay, so if you can give me a minute, I'm going to pull up a peaceful music for us so we can play it in the background. Are you guys able to hear the music okay? Okay, good. All right. So we'll start by placing one hand on your side for support. And then you're gonna bring the other arm up and over. And you should be able to feel a nice stretch on your side right here. And we're going to hold this position for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And slowly bring your arm down. And now the other side. So up and over. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And slowly bring your arm down. Okay, now drop your ear towards your shoulder. And for a little extra stretch, gently add the weight of your hand on top of your head. And hold this position for another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gently release and bring your head back to the center. And now the other side. And if you want, again, you can pull your head down a little bit more with your hand. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now drop your head down towards your chest and we're stretching the back of your neck. And hold this position for another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bring your head back to the center. And our last stretch. So take one arm out and across your body and bring it close to your body with your other arm. And hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, release. And now the other arm out and across and bring it close to your body. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, release and shake your hands a little bit. Okay, how is everyone doing? Okay, I see some thumbs up and some smiles, so that's really great. All right, so let's come back to our seat if you're standing up. And with that, I hope that you're more awake, but your body is relaxed. And hopefully we are all ready for the second part of our presentation. So as Alyssa is pulling up the slides for us, I'll just briefly describe what we're going to be doing next. So we'll be talking about our experiences as grad students, starting our education in person and transitioning to online. And we came up with 4 themes, and Elizabeth will start us off.
Thanks for that stretch break, Rachel. That was great. I hope everyone feeling those tight shoulders are feeling a little bit better. So yeah, as Rachel just mentioned, the 4 themes that arose from our conversation were flexibility, a new skill set for working virtually, balance, as well as new occupations, and community. So each one of us will discuss each theme, and then Dr. Hall will also contribute a faculty's perspective. So the first theme was that we had to be flexible. We thought we just had an extended spring break, and after 2 weeks of remote learning, we'd be back in school. And boy, were we wrong, because this has been the world's longest extended spring break. So as a result, the trajectory of our curriculum changed when we learned our summer level 2 fieldwork would be postponed and replaced with classes that we would be primarily virtual for the fall, and that when we finally did get to start our level 2 fieldwork in the spring, which is what we're doing right now, many of us would be doing so via telehealth. Next slide, please. So for the lucky few of us that were able to have some in-person classes in the fall, we learned and practiced the material while wearing masks and face shields. And between all these changes, internet difficulties, and the unknown, we had to be flexible, understanding, and just have faith that no matter where or how, our faculty would prepare us to be the best OTs possible. And they really did an amazing job of being flexible, listening to our concerns, and supporting us. So 2 quick anecdotes about flexibility I'd like to share are that I was in the adult physical rehabilitation immersion when we moved online last spring. And for our lab practicals, we typically have standardized patients to perform our examinations on. But as an alternative, since we couldn't go into lab, we had to perform them on our family members or roommates in our home, film it, and then send those in to our professors for grading. And none of us had the proper equipment at home, so we had to be creative. Here's a screenshot from my video with my roommate as my patient. And in lab, we were given actual gait belts to place around our patients when doing transfers to help prevent falls. But since I didn't have one at home, I used the belt from my bathrobe to symbolize the gait belt. And we also had a splint lab. So they mailed us everything we needed and broke us into small breakout rooms on Zoom to teach us. Instead of the fancy water baths using high heat to mold the splints that we would have done in lab, we got to make them in our frying pans in the kitchen. And I can promise you at the beginning of the program, I could have never anticipated being in my kitchen using my frying pan to make pancakes in the morning and then splints in the afternoon. So overall, the transition to online learning presented valuable lessons in flexibility, creativity, and embracing change. So now Alyssa will speak to us a bit about the new skill set for working virtually.
So through this kind of entire virtual experience, we've really been able to gain a new skill set, both as future clinicians, but also as students. Professionally, we learned to navigate the telehealth sessions and the benefits of this service delivery method. We learned how providing services virtually really allows us access to different populations that might have difficulty kind of getting OT services in person. And that really helps us maintain a focus on client-centered care for the differing needs of people. Also, when working virtually, we learned the benefits of having access to the resources that the person has at that moment. It allows us to see the environment that they're in the real time, as opposed to constructing kind of an image or a visualization of it. And with that, it allows us to provide strategies that are realistic for the person and their context. From seeing the physical space that somebody's in to walking through food labels with somebody with foods that are familiar and accessible to them on a daily basis, gaining a new skill set with virtual interventions has allowed us to really navigate the field in a different manner. As a student, remote learning has really helped us kind of create and develop some of these creative learning skills. So one way we did this was through being innovative in our home learning environments. From finding different spots in our homes with the best Wi-Fi connection to completing lab practicals, with our family members or others that we lived with, as Elizabeth was mentioning. We learned to be resourceful with what we had access to. We were also able to get creative with how we learned, particularly through our asynchronous activities or things that we did for class individually instead of as a large group. From TED Talks to movies to podcasts, we were able to explore different learning styles and kind of discover more about ourselves and the best ways that we learn, while also learning these concepts of occupational therapy. It's allowed us to work on our self-teaching skills and also our time management for sure. We learned to schedule our time appropriately, ensuring to complete anything that we needed to before class, so that when we did come together as a large group, we were able to make the most of the time we had together and apply our knowledge and really fully or further develop our clinical reasoning skills. So this is a photo from one of our last classes together. And while you can see there are quite a few of us, the photo really only shows a small portion of our group. And each time we came together, our professors did a really good job at promoting our learning through breakout rooms and case scenarios and making sure that we all were really understanding everything that we were going through. They did a really good job at promoting this positive learning environment and a sense of community among all of us, even though we weren't all together. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Rachel, who will be discussing our experience with balancing our roles and responsibilities as students.
Okay, so in addition to what Elizabeth and Alyssa mentioned, as we transitioned to remote learning, we faced another challenge. And that was as we stayed at home for school and as the lines between school and home got blurred, we struggled to maintain our work-life balance. And I'll be honest with you, for the first few weeks, I attended class from my bed almost every day because I just couldn't resist the temptation of staying in my cozy bed all day. But with this, I began to slowly lose the motivation to stay on top of my schoolwork, and I began to be less productive with my day. I also started to experience back pain from slouching in bed all the time. I started to take frequent naps and have difficulties falling asleep at night. And soon my days and nights were mixed up. So I'd wake up in the morning feeling extremely tired because I didn't get enough sleep, barely stayed awake in class. And after all my classes, I was so ready to take a nap. And the cycle continues. Also, responsibilities and roles that we have at home, like house chores that we could easily put aside while we were at school, were now demanding our attention throughout the day and could not be ignored. So work-life balance has never been more challenging, but realizing that COVID is not going to be over in a month and that we're not going back to campus anytime soon, I realized I need to do something about it and about how I was spending my how I was spending my day, and I tried really hard to regain my work-life balance. So I had to create a dedicated workspace far away from my bed and couch. I added some pictures to show some of the changes that I made. So first you see a picture of my bed that I just couldn't get out of for the few weeks we started to take classes at home. And then there's a picture of my current desk setup, and that's where I go for studying and everything, not my bed. Also, I had to work on time management by developing a daily schedule, not only for schoolwork, but also for chores, leisure, and rest. And having time to just rest and have fun without being distracted by schoolwork and other responsibilities has allowed me to decompress from stress and have a positive attitude during this stressful time. Usually, I love traveling and visiting new places. So, getting out of town with families or friends used to be how I take some time off from schoolwork and unwind. But with COVID, I had to find other ways to do that while staying safely at home. So, over the past few months, I found new hobbies such as baking, painting, or connecting with friends on Zoom. And I'm sure a lot of my classmates can relate to the experience that I just described. We all had to learn to find that balance between studying, working for some of us, and personal life that works for each of us so that we could succeed as a student while taking care of ourselves. And with that, I will pass it on to Catherine, who's going to talk about how we found supportive communities during the pandemic.
Okay, yeah, I see that Calvin has a question in the chat. Good question. We'll save it for after this section, because after I talk about community, we'll have a time where you guys can ask us a little bit more about our experience too. So in terms of community, I'm sure many of you can probably relate to this, but these times can feel very isolating, especially when there are so many things going on in the world. And because of this pandemic, the students definitely had to be a little more creative with finding community. So one example of that is a few months ago, we had a big exam at the end of all our academic classes. So the school held a trivia night where we could create teams and answer questions together. And during that time, our school was doing a fundraiser for a charity. So if we got stuck on a question, we would donate $1 to the charity in order to unlock a hint. And that was like a really good bonding moment for us. Another way of community was in regards to the new incoming students. We had mentorship circles of 1 second year, which was us, along with 5 or 6 incoming OT students so that we could help them better adjust to the program. And for the third example, this is my favorite. We had a virtual talent show where everyone showed their talents through Zoom. So in the next photo here, the first photo is of my friend John Jay. He played his guitar for everyone. And then the second photo is of my friend Nicole. She played pop songs on her violin, and she had the members guess what song she was playing. So it was like a Q&A. It was really fun. And then for the last picture, this is my friend Ashley. This photo is a little bit blurry because she's juggling 3 eggs. And when she was done, she brought her camera to her kitchen and showed us how to make the perfect fried egg. And that was her talent. So it was really cool. And one thing that I realized through my experience on Zoom is that sometimes like there is a negative view that I have on technology because it can be a tool that leads to more isolation. But especially during this time, I started to experience how it could really be used to create connection and bring people together. So yeah, this is our student experience. And before our professor and fieldwork educator, Dr. Hall, shares from her perspective, let's just take a brief pause and see if anyone has any questions or thoughts. So I know in the chat, Calvin asked, how does remote or Zoom compare to FTF?
I think that means face-to-face.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone have any thoughts?
I think the question was directed for students.
Yeah, just to be completely honest, I definitely prefer face-to-face interaction and felt that it was easier for me to learn that way. But with that being said, like we mentioned with our themes of flexibility, this is the new norm, this is our reality. And our teachers really did a great job of, for example, mailing us the equipment to go home so that we could do it in front of the computer if we didn't have those face-to-face interactions. Socially, I guess that's also a big part of graduate school is doing things with one another, but we found ways to adapt. So my friends and I, we would, for lunch twice a week, we would FaceTime with one another instead of the face-to-face lunch times that we had every day. But overall, just kind of also how Alyssa mentioned, Zoom really and remote learning really offered a cool way to use different ways to teach us. So a lot of like the videos and podcasts that we listened to, we might have not listened to or watched face to face, but we had that opportunity while being remote.
Any other questions for our students or any other responses for the Zoom versus face-to-face?
I can make a comment. Very similar to Elizabeth, it was very unexpected, and I was a bit unsure of how I was going to do virtually. Coming into graduate school, I knew that I really wanted that face-to-face opportunity, but it really taught me kind of a lot about myself and what I am kind of capable of doing on my own, and having that guidance and just everything that was set up for us was really, really helpful in helping us kind of stay on track and making sure that we were learning everything and making sure that we were understanding everything to the extent that we needed to.
Any other responses or questions before we move on? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we can probably advance to the next slide. And remember, we'll have time at the end too for more Q&A if you think of things as we go along. So in terms of the faculty perspective, I borrowed the same themes that our students identified of flexibility, a new skill set, all of those. But just wanted to elaborate on what that experience is like as a faculty member. And I both practice and teach. So I'm going to share a little bit about what that teaching experience has been like, and also just touch on a little bit of what that clinical experience has been like as well. So we can go ahead to the next slide. So flexibility is definitely the name of the game in our everyday lives, right? It's so required. Teaching, making that shift, we can take a look here. I would say easily going to a virtual platform, it felt like double, kind of triple the work that we would normally do. And some of it was just, acclimating ourselves to the virtual platform and all of the different opportunities that were available, best practices. Like Alyssa was saying, using breakout rooms, can we use smaller classroom sizes? Really making sure that we're being intentional with how much in-class screen time we have, right? It's not great to have students, sitting for 8 hours of class all day long, in front of a computer. It's just very different than being in person. And it's not good, on the faculty side of things either, right? It's not good for anyone's health. So looking at delivering some content asynchronously and then some content synchronously. And so making some decisions around, how are we delivering the content? And for me, pretty early on, I was reflecting on sort of my teaching approach and even just understanding the multiple pandemics that were happening and affecting all of our lives. These are really unprecedented times. And so, thinking about my approach to teaching and how I wanted my students to engage in their learning process, I have an obligation, to hold them to the same standards, to make sure that they're still prepared at the same level and for them to learn that information. But on my side of things, on the instructor side of things, I wanted to come at learning from a place of kindness and understanding. And so for me, that meant maybe rethinking deadlines, providing extensions, not requiring doctor's notes or anything like that. Unfortunately, we did have circumstances where students had to suddenly leave to go take care of a family member who was sick, or somebody passed away in their family. And it was just, kind of at unprecedented rates than we had seen previously. So really making sure to forefront that with my students, that they knew where I was coming from, that their health and well-being were of a priority to me, so that they were able to connect and engage optimally in the learning process. It's also just very different. I will say this picture up here, sorry, it's a little blurry if it shows up blurry on your screen, but it's what it looks like when I'm delivering an asynchronous lecture. So when I re-record my lectures, right now it's just me in my home, and often it's late at night. And so giving a lecture in front of a group of people is, even if it's virtual, is very different than lecturing to my empty living room, right, at 10 o'clock at night. It's just a completely different experience, a very different energy. So it definitely requires some flexibility with regards to that. And then also thinking about how do we assess learning, right? So having students give presentations via Zoom, Giving exams in a virtual environment was a whole other to do, having new rubrics, modifying assignments, all of those things. In terms of clinical, so I practice mostly on an outpatient capacity. And so while we do have a lot of our OTs who are in the hospital and working on the front lines, working on the COVID units with those patients, our outpatient services, almost all of them have transitioned during this time to virtual platforms. And so making that shift for patient care is huge, as you might imagine. And some of you might be going to your doctor's appointments now via telehealth, whereas before you wouldn't have, or maybe didn't have as much of that being offered. So thinking about things, when I'm working with clients on things like chronic condition management, thinking about other ways for us to track outcomes, especially if we're working on things that require measurement, like weight, right? And we're no longer in clinic, so I can't get them to step on our clinic scale so we can track their progress over time. Blood pressure and blood pressure cuffs, making sure that we have ways to continue monitoring those. And then I think a big one for me, which relates to this picture here, is I do a lot of home evaluations. And so going into someone's home and being able to evaluate it, and then thinking about how do we do that in a virtual context, that's a huge shift. So right now we've been doing that successfully for the past, I want to say about 8 months now. We've been doing those. And it, it definitely requires a big shift, working with our clients on finding, a way for them to get a camera to move safely around their home. Can they bring another family member in? All of those different things. And then also on my side of things, if you can imagine having someone move their camera around, right? It's different than like watching a movie where someone has really good camera control. Imagine someone like moving a camera around in a very shaky fashion and trying to watch that for 30 minutes. You might have a little bit of a headache, a little bit of nausea afterwards. So on the clinical side of things, I might take some preventative Dramamine or things like that to help. So just some examples of how the clinical has required a lot of flexibility too. We can go to, oh, I see some questions in the chat. Let's see, Calvin. A century when we had School of Nursing. I know, yeah. Back now in the School of Social Work, interestingly, we have our nursing program again. Yeah, and we became a part of dentistry, absolutely, which we love. We've had such a great partnership with dentistry. It's been so great. And we do work with dental students about integrating some of these principles. We have a few different interprofessional programs that are offered. So one of them is the interprofessional geriatrics curriculum, which our students are actually meeting in right now, which typically have involved dentistry and dental hygiene in the past. And we've also have some research too, which Elizabeth alluded to in the chat, collaborating with the dentistry department, looking at modifying sensory environments for persons who have different sensory abilities. So thanks for that. All right, in terms of a new skill set, I think that, me talking about flexibility has kind of highlighted a lot of the new skills that we've naturally had to develop. But one of the main things, we can go to the next slide, Alyssa, is just thinking about how to be effective in a virtual environment, both as a teacher and as a clinician. And then also thinking about our own health, right? Sitting in front of a screen obviously presents other challenges. For persons like myself who get migraines, right? Having this constant screen time, really increases those triggers, right? So finding ways to make sure that we're continuing to take care of our own health so we can be really effective. Taking stretch breaks throughout the day, and some days are better than others. I think that's the other thing that I've really taken away as a lesson learned, and that's okay. It's okay to have, kind of a bad week or a bad day, bad couple of weeks, as long as we're hopefully working towards getting back on track and getting back to something that feels a little bit better. On the next slide, we'll look at balance and new occupations. So we can go ahead and click over. So, early on, I had this, sort of dream of what I thought it was going to be like working from home, right? It was going to be this luxurious experience, like how nice. I can work from home. We won't have to commute. And similar to what, the students were saying, we thought it was maybe just going to be an extended spring break. And here we are, a year later, all feeling, the cabin pressure and the loneliness, and, we can't wait to get out and hug people and things like that. So in terms of the environment, I think pretty early on, I realized, we can click to the next one, the reality of the situation was working from home definitely is a big effort, similar to what Rachel had said, needing to make that shift in terms of creating my home workspace. I initially started, this is my actual home, I started working at my kitchen table area, which was not the best ergonomically. It was also a place where, I had a 1-year-old daughter at the time of the pandemic starting. She's now going on 2. She actually has a birthday this weekend. So toys were everywhere, and, just trying to think about what's a best workplace, and finding that balance was really important to start establishing those routines early on and to continue maintaining them. So in terms of balance in new occupations, it's about finding that balance, setting healthy boundaries, both in terms of the actual space and also in terms of when I'm allowing myself to work and when I'm not allowing myself to work. I feel like working from home, it's very easy for those things to bleed. And certain parts of my job do require me that I'm available, in off hours. That's part of my responsibility, and that's fine. But trying to, set some healthy boundaries so it's not like you're working all the time was something that I tried to work on. And it's a work in progress, I'll just say that. On the next slide, in terms of community, the students did a great job of mentioning a few ways in which we build community. We can go ahead and click over. One of the ways that I tried to build community with my students in the classroom was finding new ways for us to connect. Previously when we were in person, we would do things like potlucks. And I'm the type of person that loves to move around a room and chat with my students. Hi, how are you doing? How's this going? Hallway conversations. And so when we didn't have those, instead doing theme days, this theme day was sock day. That's why you're looking at everybody's socks on the screen. So we had a sock day. And then also I would do things like play music in our Zoom room as people were coming in or when we were on breaks. So people could get up and move and dance and just have some nice breaks and ways to build community in the classroom. Another thing I did too with our students was do kind of like mental health check-ins on a semi-regular basis, at least in my smaller classes, just to create a space to vent their anger about the situation, about the multiple pandemics, about what is going on in the world, about the things that they're experiencing, the stress that they are under, to grieve the loss of what they thought this experience was going to be like, the things that they thought their life was going to be at this point. And then, making sure that we create space to acknowledge that and to validate those feelings. And then to encourage them, those feelings are important to have, that's okay. And we want to be able to express those. But I don't want them to get stuck in a place of only feeling anger and only feeling the grief. And so, helping them and providing them with resources, right? Acknowledging I'm your instructor, I'm not your therapist, but providing them with resources then to make sure that they're continuing to move forward, that they're feeling supported, so they're able to, again, optimally engage in their coursework and in their lives. And then in terms of on the clinical side of things, finding ways for our faculty, our coworkers, our staff, all of us to continue connecting. This is some of our occupational therapists out on the Hazard Park lawn across from the hospital, doing some cartwheels. So just finding ways for us to get outside, to connect with each other in spaces, to continue supporting each other, whether it's formally or informally. Early on in the pandemic, I tried to create ways for us to come together in that space. So, and that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. So at this point, we really wanted to provide some space for open dialogue with everyone. As Elizabeth mentioned at the beginning, this is meant to be a safe space to speak, and we really just hope to get to know each of you a little bit better through our discussions each time we're together. So our first question is, what are your thoughts and experiences with COVID-19?
I think my experiences have been that I'm really surprised at the aspect of some people believe it, some people don't believe it, that information coming out is or isn't correct, that people can sign up for vaccines or not yet, or things of this sort. So there seems to be a lot more confusion about the whole COVID thing, since it is under the category of health, which is usually very reliable explanations for it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, there is definitely a lot of confusion and not always clear answers as to what is happening or what will happen. Thank you. Any other thoughts and experiences anybody would like to share?
Well, I was hoping that my wife Laura would speak up, but she's benefited from being teacher grandma 5 days a week for our youngest granddaughter. And so she's doing pre-K education work for a couple hours a day. And we interact with our other the 3 more of the grandchildren, less frequently, but we're able to encourage them into good reading habits and good educational patterns early in their lives. And that has been the silver lining for the fact that they are at home. And the older ones are doing full education online in their school district. So it's been a good thing for us to have that access, which would be far greater than if we were traveling to across the country to Philadelphia to see children for 1 or 2 weeks at a time.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it sounds like, you know, although there is a lot of confusion and things are very different right now than we probably imagined them to be a year ago, we've found some benefits out of it, and we're able to we've learned to appreciate some of the things that we've been able to gain access to, like seeing grandkids all the time. So that's great. Anybody else that would like to share any of their thoughts and experiences?
I'd just like to say, I am so impressed with our students. Your students, the students that work at the Emeriti Center, and the students who've been volunteering to connect with retirees. There's so many more connections that are being made because people don't have to get in the car and travel. So even in our own family, we've got mother-in-laws and cousins from different families that are getting to know one another. It's really hard on the students to not be in person and to do fun things together. So I appreciate hearing some of the things that you've done. I might try sock day or something like that. Or maybe even with the retirees, you never know.
Yeah, we did like a voting. I would let my students vote each week and decide what they wanted the theme to be. So we did sock day, we did early holiday winter time at the end of the semester to get some festive celebration going on when you feel that end of the semester kind of feeling. So yeah, feel free to take that and run with it.
Yeah, and I want to know, Catherine, your background. I know it's not really real, but I want to go there.
I chose it because I wanted to go here too.
Thank you. With that kind of is a very good transition into our next question of, what strategies have you guys been able to incorporate into your life to stay connected with people around you?
Well, one of my responsibilities as president of the Retired Faculty Association is to help with the help of colleagues in the association to organize a monthly distinguished lecture series. And Calvin Lau has been active in supporting the RFA board with that activity. And so in addition to the monthly lectures, we do a monthly Retired Faculty Association board meeting. And frankly, it's worked very well through Zoom. And I've been delighted to get to know the software and be able to use it.
Yeah, it's sometimes almost easier when, or we're finding easier ways to be able to stay connected with people just in different manners. We might not be face to face, but we can always hop on a Zoom call or a FaceTime or whatever video calls we prefer. So that's great. Thank you.
I belong to a couple of international and national organizations through my church. And what we've found is Zoom makes it so much easier than getting on an airplane and going up for a 2-day meeting or, trying to reach out to each other. So in a lot of ways, we know more people that we didn't really know well because we're seeing them now monthly or quarterly. And I will say the lectures at the USC Distinguished Lecture Area and even some of the others that I've been doing part of, Benaki Museum in Greece have been really wonderful ways in which I feel like I'm keeping my mind somewhat alive.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes we don't always think that the virtual world will be an easier way to navigate, but being able to access a variety of different people at the just looking at through your computer screen has been really helpful. So thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
Would
We just want to
anybody else?
Sorry to interrupt. We just want to be mindful of your time because it's 3 o'clock. So definitely hang back if you want to stay longer and ask us some more questions, but we're just going to wrap up really quickly and run through our last few slides, just being mindful of the time. So for our future presentations, these will be held Fridays from 2 to 3 p.m. Our one next week will be on in 2 weeks, occupation, health, and aging, how to maximize your health through occupation. Some topics we're thinking of the next ones that haven't been solidified yet are ergonomics, sleep, cognitive function, but we ultimately want to present on what you are interested in learning about. So if you haven't seen it already, Rachel will put an interest survey in the chat, and we'd really appreciate it if you take a look at that and let us know what you would like to learn about in the group setting. So Catherine will now speak about our one-on-one consultations.
So yeah, we're really excited about the one-on-one consultations, and in the same link that Rachel had sent, you can sign up for that with us. So these consultations are based upon your personalized needs, and you will partner with an OT student to determine how you can better improve in your own health and wellness journey. So yeah, this is like a mutually beneficial experience because we would love to hear your own experiences and stories and get to know you as well. So on the next slide, we have a few topics that we could potentially talk about during these one-on-one sessions. I know sleep and ergonomics was really helpful for some of you in the past. And if you have other needs you would like to discuss, we can talk about it together in our first session together too. So if you would like to sign up, make sure to click the link that Rachel had previously put in the chat. And once you fill out that information, someone will come and contact you. So for our next slide on resources, I'm going to have Rachel put a link in the chat of our Google document with all of these resources in case some of you have to leave earlier. But I'm going to go through and explain the links that we had put. So the first link is information about the COVID-19 vaccine. This was initially not in our presentation, but we decided to add some COVID-19 resources because things have been changing very rapidly and we wanted to put in some helpful information on it. So the COVID vaccine link, it has frequently asked questions, and it talks about things such as how many shots you need, which group of people are currently allowed for the vaccine right now. And the second resource is a link where you can make an appointment for the vaccine in the LA area if you meet the current criteria. And the third resource is actually a phone number that you can call if you would like some emotional support related to effects from the pandemic. And there's also a number that you can text if you prefer to communicate that way. For our next slide, these are resources specifically from the Emeriti Center. So we talked about the importance of community. And so the first link is a way for you to stay connected. And it's a place where you can find virtual volunteer opportunities or other resources that can help you interact with people in your life. So one example is there's like an app that helps you, that makes it easier for you to video call your family members. So yeah, it's really helpful to just see the different resources that they provide. The second one is on mental and physical health. These are resources for physical well-being. They have different apps that they show you for meditation or to encourage you in moving more during this time. And then the last link is virtual activities that you can participate in. So these include resources on virtual books, free musicals and plays during this time, and a lot of other fun things. So next slide, please. We put our OT students' emails on here in case you have any questions for us. So feel free to reach out to any of us on here. And we also put the email on the link that Rachel had sent too. So yeah, this concludes our presentation. I'm going to pass it on to Alyssa to see if there are any other questions you guys have.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, we just wanted to provide a little bit of space for questions anybody might have. They can be addressed to us individually as a group or just, again, any just general questions. Feel free to use the raise hand button or type your questions into the chat, really whatever you feel most comfortable with.
I can address Calvin's question. So yeah, at the OT department, we have a lab called the Sensory Adapted Dental Environment. And it's aimed at modifying the dental environment for children to reduce pain or sensory discomfort. It's really aimed at children with autism spectrum disorder with sensory processing challenges, but they did also find that it works for typically developing children. And now in the second run through, they're looking at its effectiveness for children with Down syndrome. So what it is, basically, you just modify different sensory aspects of the environment. So for visual, they make darkened curtains, the light doesn't directly go in the kids' eyes. There's calming lights on the ceiling. Auditory, they can listen to calming music. And for tactile, they have this like butterfly chair that's a wrap for deep proprioceptive pressure that's supposed to be calming. So I hope that answers your question.
Any other questions?
I want to make sure that we get all this great stuff posted on your website. So the PowerPoint presentation, we'll put up the recording and any of the other kinds of resources that you'd like to have us, that will be a landing page. And people will be able to go there. Friends and neighbors who weren't able to attend can watch the video. Encourage you to have other folks join us for our next sessions with our occupational therapy students. Just as a reminder, we're open to the community. We're open to everyone. So we have people joining us from across the United States. Some of our retiree organizations will be participating as well. So Great job, everyone. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, we thank you so much. Thank you for Professor Hale. Thanks to our wonderful students. And we've got a great community, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Very nice to see everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Take care. We'll see you in 2
You
weeks.
all.